So back in the early 2000s, a business was founded known as Everly Originals, featuring artist William Everly. The business was featured on HSN, or the Home Shopping Network, which certainly helped spread the word regarding this new service. See, William Everly specialized in portraits, particularly photorealistic ones, and there is a significant market for people looking to get portraits done of themselves or loved ones, since it's kind of an old-school, romantic kind of deal, you know? Back in the day, wealthy individuals would almost always commission a portrait, sometimes more than one, but ever since photographs became readily available, the practice has died out. Yet there are still artists capable of delivering portraits, and Everly seemed perfectly competent at it. His examples looked quite good, and the service was simple. See, instead of sitting for hours and hours while an artist paints your portrait, you would send photos into Everly's company, and he would simply repaint those photos as, well, a portrait. Effectively, it was a copy picture, but for the service the price seemed reasonable and people were interested. Everly Originals got plenty of orders, especially after being featured on the Home Shopping Network. But in reality, this service wasn't all it seemed. Oh no, this is actually one of the dumbest scams I've ever come across. Pure and simple, brutally stupid, in fact, from almost every conceivable angle. And the worst part is, if you guys haven't heard of it, and you probably haven't, you likely had no idea how dumb this is about to get. Now, the more astute among you at this point are probably thinking, wait, if he was the one doing all these portraits, well, how's that physically possible? After all, the Home Shopping Network would have featured the company in front of thousands of viewers. Even if only a few hundred sent in orders, well, that's still a few hundred portraits this one guy has to do? I mean, even if he's especially fast at his craft, a decent portrait's gonna take a few hours at least, right? He can't possibly be doing all the work himself, and no, he was not. And now you're probably thinking, oh, this is one of those art workshop kind of deals, isn't it? And what I mean by that is there's a much more modern practice when it comes to big-name artists. See, they get so many commissions they can't possibly do all the work themselves. But because they're paid so well for their work, they start hiring other people to do the work for them, and just put that work under their own corporate name. It's a practice that is not unusual, but is sometimes frowned upon because wouldn't that kind of defeat the purpose of the art? I mean, art is supposed to be emotional expression at its very core, right? If you're paying for art by a certain artist, well, isn't it kind of scummy not to actually do the work yourself, just sign your name? And yeah, some people don't like it, but it is a fairly normal thing, and it's kind of understandable to a degree. But at the bare minimum, you are getting a real piece of art from a competent artist, done in the style of the artist you want, so it's not like you're getting completely ripped off here, and many people go in with this understanding in the modern day, if you're the type to purchase art. So you're probably thinking, oh, okay, it must work like that. William Everly must have a bunch of different employees that also do the portraits in his company. And honestly, in this context, that sort of setup wouldn't be that bad, because we are just talking about copying photos into a portrait form. It's not like this is an abstract sort of deal, where you're expecting something truly emotional and thought-provoking. You're just expecting your photos in a portrait form, and any competent artist trained in that particular craft is gonna be able to handle it. But you'd be wrong about all of this. That isn't how this worked at all. Everly Originals wasn't even doing the bare minimum here, because the way it worked was a lot more sinister and just plain ridiculous. You would go to their website and place an order, and the cost varied depending on the package, but generally it would average out to be about $200 or $300. You would send in the photos to the company and expect them to be returned with the new portraits. Okay, great. So who's painting these portraits? Well, the answer is nobody, technically. What they would do is scan the photos into a computer and shove them into Photoshop and then just put the oil painting filter on it. And already, I mean, look, I can do that now with any image. Like, are you kidding me? That's what they were doing? But no, there was a little bit more work involved because they did have employees beyond just the graphic design department. And by graphic design department, I mean just hitting a single button in Photoshop. But they had more than that, because naturally, when they printed it out, it was obviously not paint. Even with the filter on it, it probably wasn't gonna fool people. But that's where the genius of William Everly comes in. See, what he would have his employees do then is to apply glaze. It's an acrylic product, which is used in art, but not in this manner. The employees would take a brush and basically scribble all over the prints, making it seem like it was textured like a painting should be. Now obviously, if all they were doing is just scribbling all over it with the glaze, anyone who knows anything about art is gonna recognize this as a complete fake because, duh, they really made no effort to follow the strokes that Photoshop put on it, but that is what they were doing. They would frame them, send them back, and pocket the money. All in all, the final product probably cost them about $20, even including labor, because we're just talking about the glaze pretty much. And I would bet good money that they pirated Photoshop. A company like this would not pay Adobe. I'm just saying. I just feel like that's the case. So already, we have a ridiculous scam. An alleged artist putting himself out there, saying he's the one doing all of this, when in reality, not only is he not personally doing anything, quite literally, as far as anyone knows, he never did any of the orders himself, not one time, even in the fake way, let alone really painting anything. But also, nobody is painting these portraits. You're using Photoshop and then just throwing acrylic all over it. A scam, through and through, regardless of how you try to slice it. And you're probably thinking, well, if it was that stupid, they probably got caught, right? Well, yes, eventually, but believe it or not, and I still can't believe this, the reason the company went under had nothing to do with the scam. Oh no, because this somehow gets worse. Because not only were they scamming people and delivering a product that was simply not what they said it was, but also they were completely unequipped to handle the influx of orders they wound up receiving. See, even though they weren't actually painting any portraits at all, it still took time to put each order together. Not as much as if they were actually doing any work, but they still had to take some time to do it. And they only ever had one functional location, a small office space in New Jersey. The amount of employees that could work there, with the amount of space they had no way of handling the amount of orders they started receiving, especially after they did another publicity stunt where William Everly allegedly painted a portrait of the then newly elected President Obama. Now, I don't know if he actually painted that. Honestly, a lot of things about it make me question this, but that's what he did, and of course it got more eyes onto the business, and therefore the orders got completely out of control. They literally couldn't keep up with them, and people started not only not receiving their orders, and therefore were out the money they paid because they weren't issuing refunds, but also they weren't receiving the pictures they had sent to the company to do the portraits in the first place. And in many cases, people had sent pictures that they only had one copy of. Now, admittedly, I don't know how anyone could think sending the only one-of-a-kind picture you have of someone or something that means enough to you that you want a portrait done of it would be a good idea. But regardless of that, it's still on the company here because they are morally obligated to, at the bare minimum, deliver the product, and if they cannot do that, issue a refund. This is basic commerce, and they weren't doing it. By the time they closed up shop, there were thousands of unfulfilled orders, and the Home Shopping Network themselves even sued the company because people were coming after them, because, well, they had trusted them to vouch for Everly Originals. The Home Shopping Network themselves didn't scam anybody, but they had put a scammer front and center on their own programming, and therefore allowed everyone else to be scammed. So yeah, you see how this went. But no one seems to know what became of that lawsuit, if it was settled or what. Some sources say Home Shopping Network themselves started paying people back and attempted to return some of the pictures that they could get a hold of. And what I assume is that they must have settled something out of court quietly, because if this thing blew up bigger, it would make them look bad. This thing never really hit the mainstream news, which is why this is probably the first time you're hearing about it. Only those that were directly affected really knew. Hence why I think Home Shopping Network was more inclined to try to keep it as quiet as possible. And why William Everly managed to slink away with what I assume to be the remainder of the money, A lot of the information I've given you in this video only came out because of an ex-employee, and she readily admitted that the only reason she was working for them is that not only did they not tell her exactly what she was going to be doing when she first signed up, she thought she was actually doing proper art, but also it was a job, and this was during the economic recession of the early 2000s. She really couldn't say no to a paycheck. William Everly himself still has a page on Fine Art America, where he shows some of his own works, and for a period was actually making them available for sale for thousands of dollars. But because of the scam, and those in the know about it, some people have wondered if he's even an artist at all. If any of these are genuine, or if they're all Photoshop. Maybe his entire career as an artist was nothing but a farce in order to create this company and scam people out of thousands and thousands of dollars. That claim, mind you, is alleged. There is no proof, but it is something people have been wondering, because he doesn't sell his art anymore, and in fact has gone completely radio silent when it comes to any social media presence, which is probably the smartest thing he could do in terms of saving his own skin. He likely pocketed whatever money was left and slunk back into the cesspool of scammers where he belongs, but did he do it on his own? This is a question that I personally raise, because Everly Originals still has a page on the Better Business Bureau's website. It tells us the location of the business, which was in West Orange, New Jersey, but outside of the name of the business, William Everly doesn't appear on the business at all. A different individual named Alberto Blanco does. Which, who the heck is Alberto Blanco? Well, I tried to look into that, and frankly, I don't know. First of all, that's actually not an uncommon name. I found quite a few people with the name that I'm pretty sure have zero connection to this particular scam. Two of them happen to be artists, but they're all accredited artists with an actual body of work. I think I found the actual Alberto Blanco that we're looking for, and I only say that because he used to live very close to where the business was in New Jersey. But the only details about him I'm able to gather are that he no longer lives there. He lives in North Carolina. Beyond that, though, his trail goes cold as well. If I had to guess, I'd say it was a two-person operation, beyond the regular employees they dragged into this mess. They pocketed as much money as they could for as long as they could, and when things got too hot, they took off, leaving a whole bunch of people out a lot of money, and even those who did get a product, leaving positive reviews in some cases, unknowingly owning a large framed picture that's hung on their wall that is completely and utterly worthless. Because it's not even a portrait. It's just a print from Photoshop with a bunch of acrylics scribbled all over it. It's interesting to think that there's probably still people having one of these fakes on their walls, not realizing that they got scammed. Because like I said, the only people that really know about it were directly involved in the scam, or one of the customers that never got a product in the first place. Regardless though, it seems that those responsible got away with it, as no criminal charges were ever filed as far as I'm able to gather. At the end of the day, it's an insane story, and if there's any lesson to be learned from this, it's trust no one. That might be going a bit too far with it, but that's really all I got. This is ridiculous. They're using Photoshop. I mean, what the heck? And with that, a special thank you to all my underwater train finders, SomeDude267, Orange Glass, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Brian, Jack Carson's Row of Videos, Lord Off 444, A Person 723, Royal Hudson 2860, iSurfer 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Red Lion, NS Productions 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Andrew Bowen, Josh Johnson, Caleb Rainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, Travis Zielinski, Jared Brussel, Joshua Long, Tommy Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitchen 131-232, Mark Holding, G Wiz, Mr. Terevel, Liam Wright, Hayden DeGrow, Metal for Life Guy, Hannah Bird, No, Eric Hutton, Williard Conklin, Kurt Forkham, Ohio Trucker 1, Mitchell Cole, Mr. Sleepy, Dr. Racer 78, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fun farewell.